All right. Welcome, everyone, to our live show at the Home Services Summit. I'm really excited to have who's become a good friend and entrepreneur and just an all-around great person in home service franchising, Carmelo Marsala. Before we get into his bio and background, I'm going to apologize a little bit in advance. It's not that common that I do these broadcasts from someplace that don't have fantastic internet, but today I'm doing it from my summer house up in Canada in the middle of nowhere, and I'm on a cell phone, not on a hardwire. So if for some reason during the broadcast you lose me, I've got my faithful, trusty companion, Will, who will jump on and help us out and help guide the conversation. For those of you who have been on these shows in the past, you know what it's like. We'll get into the meat and potatoes of the conversation with me asking a few questions. And at the end, we'll open this up to all of you who've got questions just to the chat. You can just jump on that chat on the right-hand side and load them in, and I'll make sure that in the last 15 minutes that we get to those. So with that, the Home Service Summit program is all about bringing to founders and CEOs and executives of home service companies content that is valuable to them. And we do that through bringing on people who have done it, who built the businesses, who've experienced it, that can help us learn from their experience. And so I'm going to try and do my best to make sure we pull that information out from Carmelo today. I'm Scott Abbott. I'm the CEO of 5-Star Franchising. Been in home service franchising for about 18 years and absolutely love it. And our sponsor and star of this show as well is our sister company to 5-Star Franchising, ProNexis, where our mission at ProNexis is to transform the customer experience in the home services industry through voice, chat, text, and instant booking. Okay, so let me just read Carmelo's bio. I mean, there's things that are in here that I think are really important to know. There's also things that I can tell you from what I know about Carmelo that makes me just love the guy. But as the CEO and founder of SprayNet, which is a home improvement franchise spanning 80 territories across North America and growing, Carmelo leads the R&D and new products, services, and technology consistently to provide homeowners with smart, cost-effective, and specialized home service improvement services that modernize a property and increase its value. I got to say that when I first got to know Carmelo a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, I couldn't be more impressed by how he came up with what he's done and how he's enfranchised it. I mean, it's not too often you meet a founder that is also an inventor, and I would put him in that category, someone that is able to be very creative around solving problems, and in an industry that I've been around for so long in a way that I never really thought could have been done. And to that point, he currently holds 3 patents on paint application processes and their related chemistry. And if I'm not mistaken, Carmelo, you actually make your paint, right?
We do. I don't know where you got that bio, Scott, but thanks for that intro. We're actually at 107 territories now. So
I love it. See, this is what happens when things go to print. That was probably like 3 months ago. You've added 27 territories in 3 months or something, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, nothing.
So yeah, Carmelo, let's just jump right in. Talk to us about your story. Like, what got you into franchising? How did SprayNet come to be?
Well, yeah, I was actually a franchisee previous to this. So I was a student painting franchisee. And that was a tremendous learning experience because, knocking on people's doors, really learning to run a business when you're 18, 19. And then I did it till I was about 20, 21, 22. And, we were painting people's houses and it was great, but I wasn't necessarily satisfied with, what we were putting on people's houses. And really the aha moment came when a very high-end home called me because I'd done so much marketing in that area and said, "Hey, can you paint my front door?" I said, "Wow, this must be a $10,000 or $15,000 door. Like, there's no way I'm going to take this brush and roller and the price I can get in the store and put this on your door." I'm like, "It's going to peel, it's going to scratch, it's going to look painted." I said, "There's got to be a way to do this," and that's kind of where the idea came from. And then we tried to figure that out. And I don't know how much you want me to get into that, but that's really the aha moment.
Let's dig right in. Well, first of all, where was that? Where did you start your business?
So that was actually, the town is called Saint Bruno in just south of Montreal, Quebec, Canada. So we're in the same country right now, you and I, Scott. But so And by the way, we started this business with only French speaking people. So that was a big challenge for me because I didn't really even speak French. So I learned French doing quotes. So yeah, we had to translate all of our stuff after to get out of Quebec, but that's another story. So yeah, so this home, I refused the job, and then I said, look, I'm not comfortable doing it. I feel like, you either need to replace your door or maybe take it off and send it to a body shop. And she's like, no, I tried that, but it'd be too glossy. I said, look, I don't think there's a solution. And, you spoke about entrepreneurs and solutions, and I'm like, there's got to be one. So I started looking, and there wasn't. And so then I started visiting factories that paint these doors. And I said, well, they're painted from a factory. How do they do it? So I visited, and I managed to get some of that product. And I said, well, if I spray this on site, it will be good. So I tested that. What ended up happening was pretty crazy. We sprayed it, and the second that I sprayed it, it ended up cracking. I'm like, whoa, what happened here? The reason for that is because when you spray those products in a factory, you want them to dry as quick as possible so that you can wrap the product and ship it out. Whereas outside, you want it to slow it down, well, because there's sun, right? So it cracked. And it also smelled like crazy because they were solvent-based products. So I said, you got to have a water-based product. You got to have a product that's we can slow down. And he's like, no, there's nothing. Like, this is the industry. So I met a chemist, convinced him to to kind of take on this project with me. We made a first prototype. Second, third, we're at probably version 400 now. And then we did that with doors and windows. And then we went to all the other services that we offer now.
So I want to dig into that a little bit because this is because of my background in painting, obviously, but also because I think it's super interesting, and I think it's great for people who are in the home service industry to think about how they can provide something that's different and unique in their home service offering. There's so many home service categories you can operate in, and every one of them that we operate in, we can introduce differentiators, things that make us special. You had 400 prototypes that you went through over the years. Just curious, how many gallons of paint have you made?
Hundreds of thousands at this point now. Like, I'm looking at our warehouse actually through the window right now. There's got to be at least 25,000 gallons of paint there just now in inventory. So we've made quite a bit now.
So, you couldn't find what you needed to solve the problem. So you end up making it yourself through a series of, experiences and processes. Tell me about at some point you decide to patent what you've got, right? How did you do that? First of all, was it difficult? Did you engage in some patent attorney or someone specialized? Tell me that process, how that played out.
Yeah. So at first we were like, well, we don't want to patent the chemistry because, well, then we have to divulge it, and we're always changing and we're always optimizing it anyway, right? Now we've integrated pretty well into the raw materials industry, so that it's interesting because they know that SprayNet is a company that will try all these new novel chemistries. So they actually send that stuff to us before they'll send it to Sherwin or whatnot, because they won't necessarily use it, right? Because they've got these old formulas. So we're always testing new stuff. So we didn't want to patent the chemistry, but what we realized is we have a process that's patentable. So we weather adjust the paint. And that was actually the secret to success for us, right? Because most people, and you're in the industry, when you talk about paint adhesion, they talk about prep. So prep is 50% of the thing, and then you got another 25%, that's the chemistry. And then you got, how does that paint coalesce? How does that dry? And I know I'm getting a bit technical here, but we needed, that story that I just told about when I sprayed it and it cracked. Well, we need to slow down the dry time sometimes. Sometimes we need to speed it up. So we actually created a series of chemicals for each one of our products that will allow us to do that. And what allows the user, whether it be the franchisee or his team, is our software. So they enter about 5 different conditions. So whether it be ambient air conditions, relative humidity, surface temperature, and then it'll tell them what additive to add into the paint at that time, so that the product will actually coalesce and come together and actually allow us to give that 15-year warranty. So that's patent number 1.
Well, before we get into the patent number 2, I want to just make sure we hit on something. You just said something that I don't think I've ever heard. You warranty your product for 15 years.
Yeah.
That is insane. I think that's different as well. You're the one that makes a product that's being warranted for 15 years, right? So you have to stand behind that. What is that warranty on the product itself and labor? Or tell me more about that. And how did you decide 15 years versus 5 or 10?
So that's an interesting question, because we actually wanted to change it to 17 or 23. just a random number, because the reason for that was, well, Heinz actually has a really interesting marketing campaign. So the 57 varieties was one of the most successful marketing campaigns in the history of marketing campaigns. If you read history of marketing. So we said, the warranty is not really something that's super important. Like, it's going to last more than 15 years. It's not going to peel. So we give a no peel warranty, right? Eventually everything fades. It'll fade slower than most of the stuff on the market, but it will never peel. And the reason for that is if you apply it properly with all of our process and the product coalesces, while at a microscopic level, it's cross-linked and there's no way anything is getting in there. So kind of like when you buy a brand new door or a brand new window. So we're actually looking at different ways of maybe changing that warranty to 17 years or 13 years or some random number, just to get people thinking about, hey, the warranty, the number of years doesn't really matter, because if it lasts more than 60 days, it'll last forever. And the reason why we know that is once the product is cured, it'll either flake off or be completely adhered.
And do you think that, in your experience, have you done any testing around whether the warranty has helped you close more deals or what impact that's had on the business?
So have we done tests? We have a lot of data to support the fact that it's an important factor for us, right? It's part of our promise to our customers. Of course, it's a differentiator. We no longer warranty against fade just because it's impossible to do so. Just like it depends on UV exposure. So we used to have a limited warranty on fade, depending on premature discoloration. We realized customers didn't really care about that. What they didn't want was the product peeling. Really, the number one thing that they want from us is that factory finish. They don't want it to look repainted. And the second most important thing is that it doesn't peel, right? Because if it peels, then it looks like crap and you can't fix it, right? Well, you can fix it, but it's complicated, right? So those are the two most important things for our customers. And then, of course, there's the, no surprises and all that other stuff, right? Like the regular home service stuff.
Well, and maybe talk a little bit about, do you track, like, for example, what percentage close rates your franchisees have or your salespeople have in the marketplace?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And what do you guys track at roughly?
So our first year franchisees, our goal is to get them close to 30%. But they'll typically start in anywhere between 20 and 25%. Our more senior franchisees will be close to that. It'll be between 40 and 50%, right? It depends on how good their salesperson is or whatnot. Yeah. But I mean, luckily for us, a lot of people go on the website, read the stuff, and they're ready to buy when we show up, because they recognize they're selling the product to us most of the time, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. So that's pretty, I ask these questions because I think there's always, as a franchisor, we have this, this duty to the franchisees to give them really good marketing tools, branding materials, sales materials, training, because ultimately their success comes down to, can we generate a lead and can they close that sale? And in home services, where you're in-home services and you're doing in-home quotes, this part of the process is, I think, really critical. And we put a lot of attention on that when we were at 5 Star Painting, our bathroom brand. We put a lot of attention on how well we can close leads and so forth. And I always try and bring things back to, what impact does this have to the customer, right? So if you offer a warranty, are we moving close rates from 35 to 40% on average? And I'm curious about, for example, does SprayNet offer any kind of financing or consumer financing for their solutions?
We do. To be honest, in Canada, not many people use it. I think a lot of people have a lot of extra value on their home now, and they're just able to use their home line of credit. In the US, it started to pick up. We use Enhancify. I don't know if you've heard of this company.
Yep.
So we do offer it. And what we've noticed in the US is the average job size is actually quite a bit higher than the Canadian average job size, which was somewhat surprising to me, but not anymore, because it seems to be across the board on average is quite a bit higher. So we do have some people using it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I asked this once again, coming back to the same point, right, where we would measure the impact of offering financing and offering a payment plan or no interest for 6 months and so forth to the consumer. And in the U.S., you are right, Carmelo. Like, both you and I are Canadian, and I now live I've been in the United States now for 18 years. I'm American officially now, but I definitely have noticed that Americans in general want payment plans and want consumer financing more. And I also had what you notice as well, as you said, how you have a larger job size down here. I also have noticed that as we've offered financing, the average job size goes up. If someone no longer thinks about a $10,000 job, now they're looking in terms of, 550 or 70 or $80 a month payments. They're willing to do more because they think they can afford more, right?
Yep.
And so I like what you're doing there, because by offering a warranty, you're being different. It should have an impact on the close, right? Offering financing, you're doing something different. Not a lot of home service brands do that. It should help you land more jobs. So let's get back to the story. So you got 400 prototypes you went through. You went through a patent process. Who did that patent process for you? And you got two other patents we haven't talked about. What are they?
So yeah, of course we engaged an attorney for that, right?
Okay.
So we have a law firm here that did our patents both in Canada and the US. The other two patents, so the other one, I'm just looking at them right here on the wall. So the other one, actually, when we started going out west into Western Canada, we started realizing that solar irradiance was actually much higher than it is in Eastern Canada. What that means is there seems to be some sort of hole in the ozone layer there where the sun actually beams much stronger on homes. So why is this important? Well, because when we're painting vinyl, the heat distortion rate of vinyl is in and around 140 Fahrenheit. And when you start putting on darker colors, well, it absorbs more heat and it's more likely to warp. So we were able to actually bring the chemistry to a point where it would drastically, it wouldn't heat up as much as most conventional paints and drastically less. But we kind of hit a ceiling of what the chemistry can do. And we had to think about, well, how do we go around this? What can we do? And we came up with a process where we actually measure the gauge of the vinyl to understand its heat distortion rate. And as needed, we actually increase the heat distortion rate before putting on the coating, which is called our vinyl shield coating. So we actually created an undercoat that will fortify the vinyl, increase its heat distortion rate so that it drastically reduces the chances of warping. So that actually was our second patent. Because, I mean, there are solar transparent pigments, there are solar reflective pigments. We tried them all. We tried all the blends. We maximized, that chemistry. We needed something to do more. We needed to really work on the vinyl rather than on the coating at that point. So that's our second patent, which is approved both in Canada and the US. Both of those are already approved in Canada and the US.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
Let's talk about it. Before we get into the third patent, I want to talk about this more because as you're speaking and talking through this, I hope our listeners are thinking about like your technical knowledge and understanding of what you are doing as a business is by far superior to what I would say most founders have. Like, we do bathrooms, for example. I couldn't tell you, other than I know we do acrylics, exactly the substrate we're putting everything on and how it all works and how it all comes together and how to patent certain processes to make that better. But you're playing to a strength you've got, Carmelo, which is clearly you have a mind and curiosity around these things that is, helping you create something that's really superior. And I got to believe that how you're talking through this, how involved are you in the franchise sales process? And do you get really technical with people looking at buying a franchise from you?
So to be honest, today I'm less involved in the franchise sales process. Where I spend most of my time is with our chemists and with our IT people. So I focus really on that because I play to my strengths. In terms of the franchise sales process, I mean, I don't think we need to get that technical, and everything that we write content that's technical enough, right? Like so that they can read through it through our sales process. I mean, all of our franchise sales team knows it now. Our CO knows it. Our VPs know it. So I don't need to start talking about the glass transition temperature of the paint, for example. Like it's irrelevant. Like, yes, you can get technical, but at some point it goes over people's heads. So we have enough content that I've written actually, just so that you don't have to repeat the same thing a million times. And I do leadership calls with franchisees that are in the process. And I also am involved in Virtual Discovery Day. That's when people ask questions. And if it does get technical, sometimes we have engineers. Like we have a franchisee who's a nuclear engineer. So of course he got a bit more technical and, able to have that conversation, which was refreshing to them just because a lot of people talk about things and, a lot of it is smoke and mirrors. When you can get technical, then people believe it, right? And that's why we have such a high close rate on our virtual discovery days, right? Because we're not just blowing smoke out of our ass, right? It's real stuff. Yeah.
Well, I got to believe, talk to me about how much time you spend with the salespeople within the organization, salespeople for your franchisees. Do you do any training for them? Are you getting technical with those people who are dealing with homeowners so they can talk to why your products and service are far more superior than others. Is that part of how you present, the benefits of your offering, or are you involved at all in sales training for your franchisees?
Well, am I personally involved in it? I mean, not as much now at this point, but
Okay.
I mean, all of the people that are training our franchisees have either been, ex-salespeople here or,
Yeah.
ex-franchisees. So they have all that knowledge to be able to do it. And normally the approach that we teach is, consultative selling, right? So what does the customer actually care about? Do they care more about the color of their home? Do they care about the technical aspect of their home, which is usually the husband more often than not? I don't want to be sexist, but usually the woman cares about the color and the husband cares about, is this actually real? So we give all of our franchisees the tools to be able to handle any of those objections. So for example, just last year, we updated all of our benchmark testing. So we said, hey guys, for doors and windows, what's important to customers? Of course, scratch resistant, mar resistance, and I think we have 2 or 3 other properties on that document. And then we take all of the quote unquote best products that exist on the market and we do benchmark testing against them and say, hey guys, here's the actual data from the lab, right? Like, so, you're not going to scratch this door. It's not going to lose its gloss. Here's the real data. So we don't often have to pull that out, but I'd say 80-20 rule, 20% of the time you do. And at least we have it in our back pocket when needed.
Do you have an actual, just want to double click on the sales training piece, 'cause I think it's so important in home services. Do you have like a sales program you guys build on, like spin selling or some other sales program, or do you have your own you've come up with?
Well, it's a blend of a whole bunch, right? Like of consultative selling and relational selling. So, I was an ex-college pro student painting franchisee, right? So it's a blend of also what they taught us, right? Like our COO is an ex-VP at College Pro, right? So we kind of just take the best practices and then we made our own, right? So we have our 10+1, step process, how to build value, how to explain the contract, how to proactively handle objections, all of that fun stuff that you normally have in a sales training program, right?
Yeah, and given your roots there, you mentioned, I want to ask some questions around this as well. Your roots with College Pro and the student painting kind of model, right? That's a very different model, very door-to-door sales model, leveraging students. Do you use any of that in your business? Do your franchisees knock doors or have people that knock doors for them?
Not really. No. We do encourage door hangers. So like, let's say you've just quoted a job, we've got door hangers for that. If you just sign a job, we've got door hangers for that. I don't know. I think I know of 1 or 2 franchisees that may have knocked on a door, but it's not part of our process to generate leads. Yeah.
It's I've seen it's worked for years, right? It calls Pro Painters as one of the very first in the industry. They've built a whole industry because there's so many concepts out there that work off of just student models and door-to-door sales. But I've not seen that be franchised successfully that I'm aware of. I can think of a concept that's really done well, franchising that, if you will. I know College Pro is a franchise, but I guess you know what I'm trying to say. A year-round, full-time program that tracks people that usually are white collar looking to buy a concept.
Well, exactly. Yeah.
But I digress. So let's come back to the story on the patent. So what's the third patent you have? And maybe just talk a little about, you said you got an attorney that got registrations done in both Canada and the US. Talk about is it a big deal to do in both countries? Is it really expensive to do that? And was it worth it?
Actually, I just got an email right before this podcast. Our patent just got approved in Australia too. So now do we want to pursue it or not? So I don't remember the exact technical terms of how it works, but you apply for, I think it's PTO. I don't remember the term, but it's an international patent that can be applied in multiple countries. There's like a conglomeration of specific countries, like I think Germany, France, Europe, like different European countries. Anyways, and then you choose. And then we had chosen obviously Canada and the US and Australia because eventually we'll likely go to Australia. Australia is very similar to Canada. So, and we also said we may at some point maybe go to France and the UK. So we included those in there. Was the process expensive? Each patent, it takes time, right? Like they're 30 pages. So like there's the time aspect, but I think you should budget probably a 15,000-20,000 per patent. I mean, it's relatively speaking, it's not crazy, but it's also a lot of our time that went into it. I'm sure if you have more of a turnkey kind of thing, it'd probably be like double that price. And we also got subsidies here on our first patent. So that helped too.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so what was the third one that you had, the third patent you
So the third one is not officially approved. It's pending. We think that it should be approved soon because we got it examined. They asked us questions. We submitted. They said it's all good. So we should hopefully be getting approval soon. But that one is actually on our ability to rejuvenate an existing roof. So what we've done here is we've basically liquefied a roof and created a formulation that we can spray on. So a roof is essentially a few layers, and then there's asphalt and there's granules. So we took those top two layers and we've kind of made them in liquid form so you can spray them on. And the benefit of this is A, you can change the color of your roof, but B, before the roof starts deteriorating, you can drastically prolong the life of it. So granules are stamped into the asphalt, and you know how they always fall off, like asphalt roofs? Yeah. There's granules in your gutters, granules all around your house, because they're simply just stamped on in the manufacturing process. So we studied the manufacturing process, and we said, well, clearly they're not going to, that's why they all come off. So we said, well, what if we can bond to the asphalt? And that's what we did. So we found resins that bond to asphalt, have, low TG, so they're able to actually stay on a roof and not melt. And then the challenge was really getting the rheology right to be able to spray that out of a pump. And that was not easy because you can't spray that out of a regular spray gun. We had to really start studying all the different types of diaphragm pumps, rotor stator pumps in the cement industry. And then we created a product for that. And we're actually successful. Yeah.
It's mind blowing. I mean, but as you think about how you have approached your industry, it's not surprising that you'd be the one to come up with something like that. That is, it is actually what I would expect from you. So, maybe just talk to us a little bit about, your core business at SprayNet really was all about vinyl products, right? And repainting and resurfacing vinyl products, vinyl windows, vinyl, surfaces, and your patents all revolved around that. And then, now you're talking about like asphalt, shingles, different. It's still a substrate and still a part of an exterior of a home, but I wouldn't have thought. I don't see a direct connection, but yet there is, just in terms of how you think about things. I'm curious to see how well has that gone? Are your franchisees being distracted by offering another service that maybe isn't right in line with exteriors of home painting, if you will? It is painting, but it's roofs. People don't think of hiring a painting company for a roof, right? How well is that going?
Scott?
What's the category, Carmelo? What is the category you're in?
Home remodeling. But so our vision is to be the most cost-effective way to modernize a property, right? And if I'm redoing your roof for a fraction of the cost of replacing it and a fraction of the mess, well, I fit within my vision, and I also fit within my promise to the customers, right? So factory finish looks like a brand new roof. I can warranty it. It's done quick and cost-effective. It's a sustainable renovation solution. So as long as it fits within our promise and our vision and our mission, which is to offer renovation solutions that maximize value for our customers and our franchisees. I feel like I'm selling here, but then that's why we added in. Otherwise, we're not going to start painting walls, right? Like that's not something that fits those three, I guess, prongs, if you will. Yeah.
So, and I love it because, you, as every entrepreneur should be doing, have a very clear vision as to what you're trying to do and who is the most important part of that equation, right? Taking care of the customer ultimately in this process. And so I get where you're coming from, Carmelo, but what I want to understand is, and for our listeners, what has that meant for your franchisees? Transitioning your franchisees from, I'm going to call it painting, and it's not. Okay, just bear with me here for a second. You're a coating company, you're coating vinyl exteriors. Going from that to now doing a roof, right? That is just a different process. It's a different type of job. And customers don't think of hiring a coating company to do that. What has that meant for you? What percentage of revenue comes from the roofing product now? Do all your franchisees do it? Have they all signed up for it, or only some of them? What does that look like?
So we like to say we refinish homes. We don't repaint them, right? So we refinish them, we basically be refinishing the roof, right? So We're in pilot mode right now. So
Okay.
we've done about 20 roofs. And we actually have not opened it up for all franchisees. So only the
Got it.
franchisees around the head office right now are currently eligible to do this. Now, all of our franchisees are chomping at the bit to
Yeah.
want to do it, especially the new ones that come in. So the new
Yeah.
ones are like, this is amazing. I want to buy this franchise because roof is going to be huge in my territory. And I said, well, slow down. The other stuff will also be huge in your territory. One of the biggest challenges for us is cannibalization, right? Like we don't want people to focus too much on one service. And that was the biggest challenge when we started entering the kitchen industry is, man, I don't want us to lose focus on our exterior stuff because that's what made us who we are. And, it's a constant battle, right? Like, hey guys, you also need to do the exteriors, right? Like it's like McDonald's, right? They can't not sell a Big Mac, right? So,
Yeah.
so it's definitely a challenge there. That being said, there's an appetite for our franchisees. And the idea came from a customer actually, because the customer was saying, hey, I don't want to do my windows and my soffits black because my roof is green and it's never going to match. So we would lose jobs. It happened not more often than not, but it would happen, right? I said, well, we got to find a way to do this. And this was 4 or 5 years ago. This was by far the most difficult product for us to come up with.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the story around that.
I want to step back for a second for the listeners, because you mentioned, you do interiors, and I don't know if it was said explicitly earlier, but you do cabinet refinishing, right? Or refacing. I guess it's refinishing, right?
Yeah, refinishing. Yeah.
And so it's important to note that SprayNet does both exterior vinyl, interior cabinetry work, and now roofs. And I think this is worth talking about because I see this happen a lot, Carmelo, in home service concepts, right? And I'll give you an example. We own a company now called Mosquito Shield. It does mosquito control. And as you would expect in the mosquito control space, it's highly, highly seasonal. You're talking about, for us Canadians, Carmelo, you can appreciate this. Killing mosquitoes is a big deal, especially in May, June, and July. It can ruin your summer. I'm here at Winnipeg, where our provincial bird is the mosquito. They are massive, and they're everywhere. And so, of course, that business model is a subscription model. It's done very, very well. But ultimately, franchisees aren't doing anything in September, October, November, December. And the natural thing was to provide them a solution that they could be more year-round. And so Christmas lights became a concept that was added on to the business. Mm-hmm. And I see this happen just once again, very frequently. A concept wants to add on some other service. And how that rolls out is so critical. And how and you mentioned this, right? You're in beta mode right now. Franchisees want to do it, but you're holding them back because you want to make sure you get it right. And you're taking the time to test in certain markets, make sure you've got the formulation correct, you've got the marketing correct, I'm assuming as well, the sales process, everything has to be nailed down, airtight and shut, and it can't be just rolled out, willy-nilly, if you will. So I think that is a really important takeaway from this conversation for anyone that's in the home services category, where they want to add something. And, the other challenge is, and I'd love to have you talk about this too, Carmelo. And you mentioned this earlier, how you're so involved in the IT, the technical aspect of the business, right? How do you pull together now roof refinishing or resurfacing with, cabinets and exteriors? Do you program the technology to allow for that kind of quoting and tracking, and then roll it out? Or tell me the kind of how you went about doing that.
Yeah, and just FYI, in 2016, we rolled out a separate concept called Delight, which was a Christmas light installation company, and I shut that down after like 3 months. I'm like, this doesn't fit our vision, doesn't fit our mission.
Yeah.
I am not installing freaking Christmas lights. Like this does not work. We did pilot mode, shut it down right away. So that's why I was really hesitant with the kitchen cabinet stuff, because franchisees obviously said, hey, we need revenue, we need cash flow in the winter. And just a quick story on kitchen cabinets. So it's the same thing. I was like, if we're going to be doing the same stuff that everybody else is doing, we're not doing it. So I actually personally went out and interviewed 10 people who got their kitchens repainted or resprayed. And the ones that got repainted, it was quite obvious. It's like, hey, it chipped after a year. Obviously, you're using regular paint. So I'm like, that's not our target. But that's not what we're competing against. But there are people who remove the cabinets and get them sprayed. And I said, I want to interview those people, and I want to see what their pain points were. And their biggest pain points were, well, A, I didn't have cabinets for like a month. And B, when I got my cabinets back, my house smelled like a body shop for another month and a half because they're solvent-based products. So they're outgassing in my house. And I didn't really feel comfortable with that around my children. So I said, okay, so we have two problems to solve here. Is A, we have to do it on site in a day or two, and we have to make sure that we use water-based products and they don't smell. So that was our challenge. We created a process, chemistry around that. And that's how we solved for that. So again, we didn't just lightly enter the market doing what everybody else was doing. If it didn't fit our vision, our mission, we weren't going to do it, and our promise to our customers. So that on that front, I just wanted to address that. But so your question was around how do we tie in the technology? So because we built our technology, same thing from scratch, when we add a new service, it'll just appear for the franchisee. So we can choose who we add this service to. So for the kitchen cabinet, it's part of the estimating module. So they can choose kitchen cabinets, and we do the marketing around it. If their marketing is on for kitchen cabinets, they'll quote those. And it's the same thing for the roof. So we've got the module done. It's in UAT, so user accepted testing right now. We just don't launch it live with all franchisees just because they're not ready for it. And we also don't want to cannibalize. Like one of our biggest challenges right now is a huge backlog, right? So we don't want to add another service when we can't produce what we already have. Does that answer your question? Because I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think the takeaway from this is and maybe to dig in a little bit, like give our listeners an idea of how much time it took you. For example, when you wanted to launch Roof, you did the product research, I'm sure, first, but when it came to the point where you actually wanted to take this to market, how much time did it take you to get your software ready, your marketing materials ready, your sales materials ready, and training ready to go? Like, how much time did that take you to do that, Carmelo?
Well, when I get excited about something, I put like all my focus on it and probably work 100 hours a week on it. So probably faster than it should have taken. And probably my team gets annoyed at that because it's like my focus and there I have to get everybody involved. But the roof stuff though, I'll tell you, that one was long because of course, as entrepreneurs, we think everything's going to be easy. So, we do our research, what exists, let's order it all. Let's see what, and there was nothing for the roofs. There was literally nothing that was comparable. Like there was like some roof paints. That one took a long time, man. That one took like almost 3 years to be able to spray it out of a gun. It took a year and a half to recognize that, hey, you can't spray all this equipment. And the thing is, that was expensive too, because every time you want to try a new gun, well, you're not going to buy a $3,000, $4,000 paint gun here. You're buying a $20,000 to $25,000 gun, and you can't really rent those. So it's like, we need to be pretty certain that it's going to work. And guess what? 2 of those guns didn't work. So now it's like, how do we resell these guns, right? So, so that one was a long process. For the kitchen stuff, it was relatively quick just because I literally was 100% involved in it. I actually did the first 15 quotes. I jotted down all of the process, right? Like at this point, I understand what it takes to, create a process because we did it, right, with the other stuff. I actually personally went on job sites and sprayed the first 5 kitchens so that we could define our process, optimize it. And then our team got involved to continuously optimize it, but we filmed training videos at the same time. So that took probably 3 to 4 months before we launched it to 5 franchisees, which was a 6-month pilot. We refined the process. And then after that, we started inviting other franchisees. And this was now 2 years ago. And kitchens probably right now represent close to 20% of our system-wide sales. So we did over 1,400 kitchens in the last couple months. So
the average job size is around what for a kitchen?
It's around 5,000.
Yeah. So you said 1,200 kitchens. You're at like $8 million, $7-8 million in revenue. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's great. And once again, I think you mentioned this, and this is important, right? Your franchisees, and I know this as well in the painting industry, they're not doing work in January in the exterior market, right? And especially in Canada or December. And so finding them a solution was important. But I think to come back to this, the roofing offering took almost 3 years to launch. The kitchens took four months to launch, but then you rolled it out over 6 months in testing before it finally went live. I think the message that I hope comes from this is that how important it is to take time to be very, very thorough and detailed, especially when you're dealing with franchisees. We only have so much credibility. A saying that I've always lived by is trust is earned in inches and lost in miles, right? And with franchisees, you've got to do so many things right to get that credibility that if you make one mistake can wipe out 2 years of hard-earned trust building. And so I think the highlight here is just to remember to take the time to be thoughtful and thorough in terms of how you approach launching a new product or service. I want to jump into some things that may be happening in your business right now that I'm seeing. I know that we have a lot of clients and we handle their customer experience. And so we're at the front end of all lead gen and calls and texts and so forth. So let's kind of shift to the marketplace right now. Obviously the world's changed quickly, right? COVID 2.5 years ago created a bump for home services. We all experienced it. It was March 20, was it 99 or 2019, sorry, that we had COVID came out of 20. Yeah, it was 2020, right? March 2020, we all saw the whole demand fall off a cliff for a month or two. And then all of a sudden it came back with a vengeance, right? Where everyone's up 100% in revenues and call volumes and so forth. And now we're seeing with the feds acting the way they are in Canada as well, I'm seeing some slowdown. Are you experiencing or seeing any slowdown in your business right now? How do you think about the business? Do you think about it any differently now than you did maybe 3 years ago, now that we're at the front of a recession? I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So we're not actually yet seeing a slowdown. I predict that we will. Now, the thing is, people ask about this all the time. And I said, well, we kind of need a slowdown because we've got franchisees booking into next year at this point. This is not sustainable, right? There's no way, it's crazy, right? And this, right? So a slowdown will just bring us back to normal at this point. Normal is fine. And the thing is, I tell a lot of this question is starting to come up more and more now, obviously. I started this business out of a recession, and 2008, 2009, Canada kind of gets it a bit later. When I started this business, we were basically in a recession, and it was actually a good product for the marketplace because we're a cheaper solution, right? We're something that you can do for not too expensive on your house. So I'm not going to say that we're entirely, if there's an economic depression, obviously it's going to affect us, but I would say we're relatively recession resistant just because we are a cheaper alternative. So that's something good. That's something that's good for our business. But yeah, for sure. I mean, I've been saying this for a while now that this can't keep going. This is craziness. We've been telling our franchisees ramp up now because it's not going to last forever. Now more and more people are talking about this, right?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things that came from this. Your comments here, they're important, right? So first of all, as a home service franchisor, I couldn't agree more that it had to happen. It has to happen. It's been unhealthy. Yeah. It's hard to find people to do work. It's hard to find technicians. It's hard to find salespeople. And so it is. I think it's a good thing for the industry. Obviously, if it's as long as it's not a massive depression, slowdown I think is welcomed. This should be playing into a narrative that we want to be bringing to candidates who are looking at buying our concepts, right? Because as you said, it's coming up more and more often. People who are looking at buying a franchise now, they're reading the news. It's all over the place. The stock market's corrected 30-40%. It's going to be on people's minds. And so you've got to be able to have a solid answers to why this is good for home services. From a franchisor's perspective as well, for those of you who haven't lived through a recession in the past, when a recession occurs and unemployment rates go up, typically we start to see more candidates come out looking to buy a business because they've lost their jobs, right? Yeah. And so that is a good thing as long as there's financing. The only time we saw a dip in demand around franchise sales was interest levels were high, but we saw less unit sales was because we didn't have financing in 2009, 2010. Just the whole financial markets froze. So going into this environment, we're obviously optimistic that won't happen. But I do think we have to once again have that narrative to make sure that part of our sales process in franchise development is to talk through what our business looks like in a recession. How do we act and get in front of it, right, Carmelo? If there are things, and you hit on something that's really, really important. You're launching products or services that are way less expensive that can extend the life of a person's home for less than it would cost to rip off their roof and put a new roof on, or to replace all their vinyl, for example. So I think these are what services do you have in your home services business that could be considered as an effective and efficient way of prolonging the life of a home or maintaining the house? Carmelo, I'm curious, do you ever do any research on the economy and what the difference between maintenance purchases versus install or new purchases?
Yeah, so I subscribe to JCHS, which is a Joint Center for Housing Studies at Harvard. Yeah,
perfect.
And what's crazy is they are still talking about how Q3 and Q4 is going to have crazy growth in the home service space. And I know the next one is coming out soon. So I'm looking to see what their Q3 actual updated one will say. But yeah, so I think if you're in the space, JCHS is something that you should definitely be looking at, all the time, right? It's amazing.
Yeah. The Harvard School does a lot of research here. I think there's no question that any listener should be, privy to that and watch that closely. They do great at forecasting. I think the other thing that's important, Carmelo, that I've seen is, and I'm curious because I haven't looked at some of these stats for a while. I don't know if you have, but I've seen that maintenance spending, even in 2008, 9, 10, was growing between 6 and 8% per year, right? At the end of the day, their largest asset for most Americans and Canadians is their home. And so they will maintain if they have to. If something breaks, they're going to fix it. If your faucet stops working, they're going to call a plumber. If your paint's peeling and you're exposing the wood, it's going to cost you more to fix it later and then fix it now. So it's a pound of what's the expression? A tablespoon of prevention is worth a pound of cure, or something like that. Whatever the expression is, but the idea being people will spend and should be spending to maintain. On install and new work, though, that has been and connected pretty closely to the economy, right? And so if you're in a home services industry that doesn't have that maintenance element, or if you can't focus on that, then you got to think through how you go about providing your service in a way that is more digestible for people who might be in a tighter budget now. Financing might be an option as well.
And I think, Scott, to your point, if you look at the data, yes, new installs, the number may go down, but more importantly, the average job size goes down. So if you're in an industry where your average job size is super big, maybe it's thinking about how can we do smaller jobs, right? Because people will still spend money, just not as much money.
Yeah. And so on that note, Carmelo, I'd like to just maybe talk about, or have you, or do you do anything to kind of get in front of this narrative? Because I'm assuming your franchisees, all of our franchisees are out there operating their business. They're reading the news as well. Do you have like a town hall you're doing with your franchisees once a quarter, once a month? Is there some kind of communication you're sending out to kind of get in front of some of these things to help them think through their business and what it should look like in maybe a different environment that we've experienced in the last couple of years?
Yeah, we usually do a monthly update. We actually just did one yesterday. The thing is, during the summer, we do it bi-monthly just because it's very hard to get everybody on these calls, but we record them when we post them. But typically what we talk about there is, what are the challenges coming, like we haven't necessarily dove too deep into that because right now most franchisees are just flooded with leads and they're trying to just figure out how to produce them. So really our focus is on how do you ramp up, how do you optimize, how do you hire more people, how do you train them quickly, what tools are we going to provide you to be able to do that? But it's definitely going to start creeping in because in my intro at convention, I said, hey guys, here's what Harvard is saying. I get they're much smarter than I am, but here's what I think. I think this is not going to last forever because Harvard is saying, I think it's 17.4, 19.4 growth in Q3 in the home improvement sector across the board. That's like historic records. Like, what I mean? Like more than COVID time. So I don't know how sustainable this is. So we need to start thinking about what that means for us in our business, right?
I can say that, we take calls for about 46 brands, Carmelo, at this point, right? At ProNexis. And so I've done same store comparisons year over year for the last couple of years. And I will say that there is no question that call volume is down across the board for almost every category right now, compared to 2021. If you were to take the 2022 call volume week by week, same store franchisees over prior year, and run an analysis from the beginning of this year to prior periods, 2022 represents, it's higher than 2020, but it's lower than 2021. So there is, I don't think there's any alarm bells going off. We're talking about down 5%, down 10%, but normally people are up 5% or up 10%. So I think these are healthy. It's a healthy number to see because and just like you mentioned, most of my franchisees don't have the capacity to do the work that people want them to do. So I think it's a good thing, but be aware of it, be thoughtful. And for that matter, get leading indicators in your business. If you don't have them already, you should be looking at leading indicators in your home service brand to know what things look like 4, 5, 6 months out, because you need to help your franchisees get prepared. And I love what you do there with your updates monthly.
I'm curious to see how that compares to 2019 and what the average job size looked like, because I think the average job size would have went up. Number of jobs probably came down. Yeah. But yeah, I agree with you. There has to be a slowdown. Like there has to be. Yeah.
There's some questions. I'm sure everyone, if you who are listening here live, as I mentioned, there's a chat here. I went a little longer than I normally do with Carmelo, but I could go for another hour if I wanted to. I'm sure I love just talking with you, Carmelo, and you're so knowledgeable and got such great experience. I'd like to get anyone that's watching here live with us a chance to ask questions, but I, from my cell phone, can't see the chat. Can you see the chat, Carmelo?
I cannot. Let me see if I can click on it to open.
Maybe Will, can you jump on for a second? And if there are any, maybe just jump on.
Phil Metra here. What does SprayNet do in profiling franchise candidates? Is that something
Thanks,
you
Bill.
want to do?
Carmelo, yeah, you hit it. Go ahead. This is the audience's time to ask you questions, and please, yeah, feel free.
So we do use a tool called Zoracle. I'm sure Scott, you've heard of it. So what we did is we created a profile of all of our A franchisees, and then it creates an algorithm and asks questions to the potential franchisees, and we see how they rank versus our existing high performers. Then we go through different leadership calls. We do virtual discovery day where at the end we vote on the candidate. Does this person fit our culture? And what we recently introduced actually is spying on their social media. I can't believe we didn't do this earlier because we had to recently exit a franchisee just because crazy stuff on his Facebook, which we would have seen had we just done that step.
Facebook shocking.
Yeah, so a customer had to take screenshots and send that to us. Anyway, so that's a new step that we had in our process. So if you don't have that in your process, I would recommend you learn a lot about people through their Facebook posts and Instagram and LinkedIn.
Well, you hit on something really important, right? And the question I think is really a really solid question as well, which is we need to be thinking about who we let into our business. It's easy when you're hiring people to screen aggressively, right? Because they're not paying to come to work for you. They're joining a culture that you've established, and you want that to stick. When it's a franchisee, it's different, right? These are people who are paying you to be a part of your system, and they're paying you royalties that keeps your business going and keep the lights on. And so I can see how it is very easy for people to let anyone in. But what you said, which I love, is first of all using a tool like Zoracle to give you some scores on your franchisees. But more importantly, you said something about voting on the candidate and rating them against your values. Talk to me more about that.
So we have a questionnaire that we send out to our team at the end of the virtual discovery day, which is anonymous, and people vote. They answer a series of questions on, does this person fit our culture? Does this person fit our values? Do you think they'll be a high performer? Would you approve this candidate? Yes or no? And we need to hit a certain threshold for us to kind of consider moving forward. Do we do this religiously and diligently? Probably we should do it more. We started that process, something that we have to be more diligent about always doing and more consistent around doing it. Because sometimes, we've got 4 people on discovery day, and we love them all, so we don't necessarily send out a survey. But we may feel like, oh, maybe somebody didn't like them, right? So I think sometimes we project what we think about candidates to everybody else, and I think we should more religiously do this process.
Well, I think the more you can have candidates understand that they are qualifying, right? They need to be approved. They need to be awarded a franchise. The more that the candidate views this as something that they need to earn, the more you'll attract the right kind of people that want to follow your process. And so I think, a lot of wisdom in that. So that's a great question, Phil. Carmelo, I can't see the chat. Are there any other questions in there you want to go ahead?
Yeah, on that, by the way, just to finish off that thought, our franchise development team does a really good job of making sure that by the time they're at virtual discovery day, they fit our culture, right? Because we don't want, let's say you got 5 people on the call and one person that doesn't, it kind of alienates the other 4. And that's happened before, and we make sure that doesn't happen as much as possible. There's no stupid questions, but there's some, I don't know if there's a synonym for stupid that I can use that's more accepted. Just weird questions. You're like, this person's not going to fit, right? So anyways, just on that, just do a better job of making sure that if they're at virtual discovery day, that's good. So we've got Paul Primichuk here. How is SprayNet managing the day-to-day activities of franchisees, their revenues, royalties, etc.? And I'm not sure I fully understand that question, but I'm assuming...
Yeah, I think your software, right? Like, what are you using to run it? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So we've actually built a software from scratch. The only reason we had to do that is because of all our our processes, the patents, and all that stuff. So we basically have a dashboard. We take all that data from our data warehouses and we funnel that back into Power BI. And we have dashboards for our team, our franchisees, et cetera, et cetera. So, and again, like this was not something that took a month. This is a continuous work in progress. And it takes a long time and it takes a good amount of money. Like we're at the point now where we have to have it to scale, but we did not have it early on. So I don't know if there's emerging brands or I don't know like what, but anyways, it's something that you should think about and try to do sooner rather than later though.
Yeah, I think to this point or question, I know how SprayNet does it, right? Building something, the build buy question is a really important one. When we started Five Star Painting, there wasn't a piece of software that could do what we wanted, so we built it. And we're on version 3 at this point in that category. But there are great pieces of software out there like ServiceMinder. We looked at using them. There is Fran Connect to help you keep connected to your franchisees. And I'm noticing there's more and more tools now in home services than there ever has been, frankly. And so, if you're looking at, there's endless options out there. My recommendation would be if you can find something that works, that can be customized, you'll be better off. Because Carmelo, I mean, you're probably in the millions at this point developing your technology, right?
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. Good point, Scott. Like there's probably going to be stuff that works for your business. Just for ours it didn't. But in most cases, there's something that works. There's so many softwares out there. At the IFA, if you do the turn of the vendor area, you'll find something for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, great question and great response, Carmelo. Thank you. Anything else in that chat?
So camleads.io, I'm assuming this is a company. What do you typically look for in lead partner to sustain a long-term partnership on a corporate level to funnel leads to your individual franchisees? So I'm assuming this is, what do we look for in agencies, marketing agencies for our franchisees?
How do you, I think a great question here is like, Carmelo, who do you use to do your lead generation for you that runs, I'm assuming you do PPC and SEO and social and so forth. Who's doing it for you? And are you happy with it? What kind of program are you running right now?
So because we're in the process of potentially switching, I can't really comment too much on that, but our structure is we used to do a lot more in-house. We've started, finding some pretty solid vendors, especially as you grow. You're able to find, more vendors that you can afford, I guess. Our structure is that we take care of the marketing for the franchisees. So they pay us a production fee and we handle it on their behalf. So what we do, so it's a combination of PPC, social ads. So especially in home services now, like TikTok is actually gaining some ground. So we've just recently joined TikTok. Pinterest has worked relatively well for us. Impression share is much, much cheaper than on Facebook and Instagram, which are the standards that you need to be on anyways. And of course, Google AdWords, right? And remarketing and all of that stuff. So I don't know if that answers that question, because it's like, what do you look for to sustain a long-term partnership? Well, it's really holding your vendors accountable to the metrics, right? Like, we look at customer acquisition cost, obviously. What does it cost for us to get an exterior customer, an interior customer, et cetera, et cetera. So that's always the focus. And we tie that back into our software to be able to know what's the cost per job, right? And it needs to fit within a certain range for us to, be okay with the performance.
And I think I'd like to speak to this a little bit because I've got so much time invested in this specific area. We used to bring it all the way down to what the value of the phone ringing was for any lead category. So if the phone rang, never mind whether I set an appointment or whether I made a sale, if you just track it all the way through the process of the sales funnel, if you just make the phone ring, it was worth something, right? And ultimately what it had all come down to is, could my franchisees spend 10% or less on marketing and generate just tons of business? And if they could, then whatever that was, we would feed it. And if it couldn't, we would starve it. That was kind of our measurement. And we used to have it down to, if a lead came in from a referral, what was that worth versus a, Service Magic at the time, which is now Home Advisor, or Angie's List, or any other category. But we took great pride that on for most of our franchisees, every dollar they spent would get them about $13 back in revenue. And that was kind of like about 8% of their revenue was spent on marketing. And I think that's really the measurement that the franchisees are looking at, right? What's their ROI? And to that point, and I'm sure, Carmelo, you have software that tracks this really well. I'm positive, but making sure that you have technology that will track that lead from the beginning to the end and target keywords and so forth, so that it's automatically linked through, that our agents don't have to ask, that's linked through the link automatically, making sure that that data is super
Right.
clear and true. So I think that great question, and we can spend a lot more time on that. Is there any more questions on the chat, Carmelo? Because we've got like 1 minute left before we have to close off.
There are none, no.
Okay, good. Well, then we've done a fantastic job of making sure we were right on time.
If you've got 30 seconds, I was just going to say, so
Yeah.
we don't take just a percentage of revenue. We actually add gross margin in to make sure that there's an ROI on that revenue. So the percentage of revenue is somewhat irrelevant to us because we have different gross margin on different services that we offer. So it's important to kind of get more granular with the franchisees so they understand that it's not super simple.
Yeah, great point. Some services, right, require more margin because they have less gross margin available to them. But in almost all the businesses that we have, we've got 6 brands currently. We don't have big swings in margin. They're almost all around 50% gross, 60% gross margins. Where I think with you probably have vinyl or kitchens versus exteriors versus roof. I'm sure it's pretty big differences in margin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, Carmelo, this has been awesome. You've been a fantastic guest on the show. Thanks, everyone, for your questions. All this will be loaded into YouTube later on for those who couldn't make it. And thank you. And have a wonderful summer, and I hope to see you again soon.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me.
Take care. Bye-bye.